What's up? Welcome to Wine School. I'm Mike. With me as always, Eric. We've got special guests today. We got Susan, Kit, Gabrielle. What's up, guys?
Hello.
Hello.
We're going to drink some champagne.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
You want to talk about today's sponsor,
I do.
Susan?
Yes, today's sponsor is Semi-Random Walks Podcast.
Yeah, check them out on iTunes.
Check them out.
All right, so today we're drinking champagne, and specifically, we're drinking a sparkling wine that's from the Champagne region in France. And that, we refer to champagne a lot of times in America as anything with bubbles, but really, it's only wine that comes from the Champagne region of France. And I think champagne's got a bit of an interesting rap. It's kind of like the wedding drink or the toast drink or whatever. And for years, I personally was like, I'm not into champagne. It's a girl drink. Gives me a headache. I didn't understand what it was all about. But as I spent a little bit more time like trying to figure out like what it's all about, what I found is that champagne works awesome as an aperitif. So I've started doing this. Every time I go to a restaurant, if I'm going to have a nice dinner, before I eat, I get a glass of something bubbly, drink it, and it really sort of primes the gastrointestinal system, gets you ready, and you just enjoy your meal that much more.
Okay.
So once I started figuring out, okay, this is what this
good,
is
yeah.
for, right? I get this now.
That plus the sex change, right?
That too, yeah. I started wearing a skirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was that. But I started digging a little bit deeper into champagne and what goes on with it. And the real question is why does it bubble? Where do the bubbles come from?
Okay.
That's a good question.
Why is it fizzy? So we're going to explain that right now. So champagne, in the Champagne region of France, they grow and they make wine from pretty much three grapes. It's Pinot Noir, it's Chardonnay, and it's Pinot Meunier. And they basically use Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and they use a little bit of Pinot Meunier. So it's just the same kind of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay that we would get anywhere else.
Okay.
But Champagne is so far north, it's so cold there, it's at basically the highest latitude that you can possibly make wine. It's very tough to get the grapes ripe. And so you end up with these grapes that are sort of barely ripe enough to ferment, and they make reasonably uninteresting wine on their own.
Okay.
So in Champagne, what they do is they start by making the wine. You make this still, uninteresting, low alcohol wine. They ferment it, turn it into wine. They have it ready to go.
Wow.
Then they take it and they put it into a bottle. So they bottle it, and before they put the cap on, they put a little bit of basically sugar into the bottle.
Sugar,
Oh,
okay.
That explains the headache, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't, because what happens is then they put the cap on
Okay.
and they set the bottle down, and the sugar goes through another fermentation cycle.
Oh, is it
Okay.
another one to start a new fermentation cycle?
Yeah, but there's only a little bit of sugar in there, so there's not a ton, but there's two byproducts of fermentation. There's heat
Okay.
and there's carbon dioxide.
Oh, okay.
So the heat kind of goes through the walls of the glass, no problem. But the carbon dioxide, it's trapped in the bottle. It's got nowhere to go. So it dissolves into the wine
Okay.
until some later time when you pop it open, and then it lets it all out, and woo, it goes, it gets all fizzy.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So that's the process of champagne, and that method of doing that secondary fermentation in the bottle is very traditional. It's called méthode traditionnelle or méthode champenoise, doing it in the bottle. Now, what happens is, though, when you have wine fermenting, you have yeast eating sugar, and then the yeast die. Well, when they die, they kind of turn into this yucky junk, and they float to the bottom of the bottle. So now we get this bottle of champagne. It's nice and fermented, and it's got all this junk at the bottom of the bottle. So what do? Well, there's some guy who it's his job where every day they have this thing called a poupe tray, which is basically a wine rack, and the guy comes in and he wiggles it a little bit, and he tilts it up a little bit, and then he wiggles it and he tilts it up a little bit. He does a little tiny bit every day over a period of time, maybe years, until the thing is turned upside down. And then all the crap that's in there floats up into the neck of the bottle.
Okay.
Now we have to get it out of the bottle. So we take the bottle and we shove it into just the neck, into this freezing cold water, and it freezes the top solid. So now we got a plug of junk that's in the top. And by the way, that's some guy's job, right? That's your job. Like
Yeah.
every day you go in and it's called riddling.
It's done manually?
In the high-end champagne houses,
Okay.
it's done manually.
Wow.
It's some guy is the
Okay.
master riddler, and
Okay.
his every day
Mastering.
that's his job. You go down and you riddle bottles, 10,000 bottles a day, just a little bit.
Out of the
Just
poopa tray.
out of the poopa tray. Yep. The lower end houses will sometimes use mechanical devices that jiggle them and cooks. And they would use that's a gyro palette, by the way, my friend. Very good, very good. So we're learning the vocab you can toss around down at the
Sound
club.
Gyro
sound
pirate?
intelligent, yeah.
Gyro palette,
Palette.
or riddling from the poopa tray.
Okay, that's an automated poopa tray riddler.
Exactly.
All right,
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm following.
That is great
Got it.
cocktail conversation.
Right.
We are set for our next cocktail.
So you get this thing and finally it's turned upside down and you dunk it in the freezing water. It freezes the plug solid. We open up the top of the bottle and the bottle has pressure in it. So pop, it shoots the plug out.
It shows, okay.
And now we're ready to bottle the wine. But now, it's only up to about here. So now we dump a little bit more extra sweet wine in and then we put the cap on and we're ready to go.
Jeez,
Wow,
that
no
is quite
idea.
the process.
Yeah, champagne,
Wow.
it's this ridiculously involved
Jeez.
process
Very
to
nice.
turn this wine that by itself would be relatively low alcohol and relatively uneventful into this magical, different, important thing. But the process takes a lot of time. And that's why these
Very
higher end
interesting.
champagnes are, fairly expensive. You get some of these.
No wonder they're so protective of the name too.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's ways to do it on the cheap. And like we started doing it in California,
Yeah.
and the French are like, "That's not champagne.
Yeah.
Wait, you don't have a guy
There's no
riddling.
poopa tray.
There's no riddler.
There's no guy.
Exactly. So, interestingly enough, what ends up happening with these higher end champagnes, that those dead yeast cells that die and sit in that bottle for 2 or 3 years. They end up imparting this very yeasty characteristic to the wine. And so if you drink a really high-end champagne, it almost tastes like toast or like a brioche or
Okay.
freshly baked croissants. It's got a very yeasty, bready kind of sensation to it.
Okay.
And so, because it's been sitting on these dead yeast cells for 2 or 3 or 5 years. Another couple interesting points about champagne. They do this whole process. It's very elaborate. But for the most part, they're mixing wine from different years together. Most of the time when you get a bottle of champagne, it will not have a year on it. It's a mixture,
Oh,
which is
got it.
different than
Okay.
most wines, right, where there's a year.
Right.
Except for certain really good years, at which point they will just make a standard one and they'll release it with a year. So if you're at the store and you're buying champagne and you see a champagne with a year on it,
Okay.
it's probably pretty freaking good.
Okay.
Or at least it's better than the typical champagne produced by that house.
Oh, good to
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
A couple other things about this. Most of the time you get a blend of the Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But sometimes they do all of one or all of the other. They do all of Chardonnay, it's white. They call it a Blanc de Blanc.
Okay.
If they do it all of Pinot Noir, it's red. It's called a Blanc de Noir. So what we're about to drink is a Blanc to Blanc.
Okay.
So this is made 100% from Chardonnay, and you'll see it has no year on it. So this is just a normal, regular Chardonnay, but a good one nevertheless. Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about like this particular bottle?
Of course, this bottle is a Pertois Morissette, and this particular vineyard, actually they're 40 acres, about 2/3 of that is in a Grand Cru rated village, so a lot of high-end champagne. And they're also pretty big on kind of sustainable, organic, no pesticide kind of growing of their grapes. The one interesting thing about this particular champagne is that it's actually been described as the wine that gives you a big hug. So let's try it out and see if it holds true. We get some bromance going on here.
All right, so a couple things. There's always the fun of opening the bottle
Yes.
of champagne and popping
This
it.
is my kid's favorite.
Stand back.
So a couple things. First off, recognize every champagne bottle has this little thing has got 6 twists in it.
Okay.
So you put your thumb over it.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
6. Good to
There
go.
you go.
Now, although it is fun as hell to shoot the cork across the room, and I have done this
the best part.
many times, the French would say that your wine opening should make a sound no louder than the sigh of a satisfied woman.
Well,
That would be pretty loud, actually.
And I'm always
yeah,
like,
that's
yeah, even
actually-
unsatisfied, you're
this is really
screaming
loud.
bloody murder.
Maybe it's
Like, I don't know
that
what's going on.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's the French. It's the French.
It's the French, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But
Like
one trick,
ambulance siren.
It's not the
quite as
Brazilians,
exciting.
clearly.
Yeah, exactly.
it's not a Brazilian woman. That'd make it sound like a cat stuck in a fence. So, one trick on opening the wine is if you hold the cork, but twist the bottle instead of
Hold
the
the
cork,
cork and
but
twist the
the
bottle.
bottle down.
Oh.
That's a
Trick.
satisfied woman
Oh.
Fresh
just sighing.
Oh,
Okay.
that's it?
Now we're going to drink
Alright.
it. Now, one of the things I should talk about is the glasses. So the typical glasses for champagne are the tall little flutes or the little shallow coupes, which were supposedly modeled after Marie Antoinette's breasts, but that's kind of an urban legend.
Okay.
And the reason that they do that is, especially the flutes, is because of you get to see the bubbles go all the way up. Ooh. But in my opinion, it ruins the nose of the wine. You can't really smell it because there's this much surface area. So I prefer to drink them in bigger glasses, which is what we're doing today, because we're in my hood, so we're doing it my way. And you'll see it's not quite, you won't get quite as much fizz because it's not as tucked in, but you will get a lot more flavor on the nose, and we should expect to find a lot of that bready, yeasty quality to it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Like it.
Very
Wow.
refreshing.
Delicious.
Even better now that I know how it was made. You know,
Right.
all the work that was gone
There's some
into
little
it.
dude in the
Yeah.
cave, like
Like,
putting
I
oil in the
know,
bottle
it's
every
not-
day.
It
or-
tastes better now.
The funny thing
Right?
is talk about
Yeah.
the sugar, but it's not sweet at all. I don't
It
feel
isn't sweet. No, I agree.
It's good.
So one of the things that they'll do is when they add that little tiny bit of sugar at the end, they have some play with how much sugar they add. And so you'll see things that'll say like brut.
Oh yeah.
So
Okay.
a lot of times you'll see brut on a champagne bottle. What is
Right.
brut? Brut means they put a little bit of sugar in.
Oh, I see.
I
Actually-
thought that made it drier.
Brut actually means dry, but
Oh.
they found for champagne, people would say, I want a dry champagne, but they don't. They want a little bit of sweetness.
A little
So
bit.
you'll see there's actually champagne that will be extra brut.
Okay.
But that's the
Oh.
ones that are actually dry.
Okay.
And the
The
brut ones,
extra-
even though it
I
says
see.
dry,
It's not dry.
the French have figured out how to market to us stupid Americans.
Right.
Like we say we want this,
Extra
but we really
brut.
want this. Yeah. So brut means they put a little bit of sugar on, and then the kind of the sugar goes up from there. So this has
Very
got
good.
just a little tiny bit. It's delightful, right?
It's excellent.
Yeah, wonderful.
Very
Very
good,
nice.
very good.
Wonderful.
So, go ahead.
I will drink this. I mean, any place, any time is really good. Better than wine. You know?
Before every
Yeah.
meal to cleanse your
think,
palate.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Especially
you eat
before
cereal in the
dinner.
morning.
Breakfast,
you
lunch, and
want
dinner.
Yeah,
Right before
breakfast,
the
lunch,
cereal?
and dinner.
Eggs and bacon.
to knock down a glass or two. So, anyways, that's champagne. As always, Kit, we're going out with 30 seconds of craziness. You want to introduce us out with that?
Sure. The craziness today is Snails and Oysters, the long one.
And this is as dark and industrial and weird a song as you're gonna find on Rock and Roll Wine School. So I would strongly encourage you to stay for the 30 seconds. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Salut.
Salud.
Great.
Nicely done.